How's that for an old time reference, Bob? That was probably around our time,
He
right?
said, "Blame it on the rain." I don't remember that line, but it
That was one of their big songs. Like Blame It on the Rain. I think they only had two or three big hits, but
they lip synced.
uh, yeah, that's all right. Let's retweet this and then just get started. All right, let's post that. And all righty. Good morning, everybody. It is the 13th. Not a Friday the 13th, but 13 is kind of unlucky anyway, but kind of lucky if you're long the market today. So I'm David Maris. Bob Morris is joining us, expert in oil, gas, and so much more. Bob, are we up today at like near all-time highs because we have a deal yet again? Is this a breaking news story? Do we have yet another deal, or is it
I don't
just
know.
a rally on the CPI, or what does it all mean for? Does the CPI number mean anything for oil and gas stocks?
I mean, the CPI. One of the reasons it was down a little bit was oil prices being down for the month. But same thing with the PPI this morning. That if you exclude oil, it was actually up a little bit more than what the numbers showed, just because we're up on the month now, but we're down for the period that was measured. And so, oil, we continue on this roller coaster here, and I think it gets increasingly difficult for two reasons. One, Monday is actually the expiration date for the original 60-day MOU. That was the period that they were supposed to negotiate some sort of definitive deal and then move forward. There doesn't seem to be any discussion of extending that MOU. And the second thing that's fast approaching are the midterms. And we've said from the very beginning that we thought Iran would play this delay game, hoping that somehow they could put political pressure on Trump and hold out, for an extended period. And that game is sort of tipping more in their favor the more closer we get to the midterms, and without any real solution and without any of this past military action having resulted in any regime change or actually any significant disruption to whoever's running the country or whoever seems to be in power in Iran. Yes, it's causing a little bit of well, more than a little bit of economic disruption internally in Iran. But I think those in charge, like we said earlier this week, really don't care. They're holding out to try and keep or maintain control of the strait. And, ultimately the issue about nuclear weapons and uranium enrichment, they're trying, I think, behind the scenes, trying to hold out on that. So we really haven't seen any indication that we're near to any sort of breakthrough. You saw over the weekend that Iran put out some ridiculous demands. Trump kind of countered with, well, we want reparations too, but, sort of tit for tat back and forth. And so how does this play out? Does Iran continue to stall and hope that they can stall this up until the midterms and that Trump won't escalate military action leading into the midterms? Or does it go the other direction and Trump finally says, look, enough's enough. The MOU is expired. Nothing's happening. And if I'm going to pull a trigger, I need to do it now and get this sort of kind of cleaned up before we get even closer to the midterms. And so we'll see sort of how this plays out. It's hard to predict. I mean, we've gone back and forth. I don't know how many times. The roller coaster in oil prices continues. We're up here at $80 a barrel. I'm holding on all my names. I'm not selling anything. If one thing, I said on Monday, I nibbled a little bit, bought a little bit of Oxy, new position for me, and I'm sort of watching that to add to that position on any pullback. It wasn't a lot, but dipping my toe in the water. I like the results coming out of the quarter and their outlook and their plan over the next few years and the increase in the dividend. So that's one name that if we get a sharp pullback, I'll probably continue to nibble and add to that position. But otherwise, it's hard to predict how this plays out with Iran, and it's not gone. I don't think according to the way the original plan was from the administration. I think a lot of people are surprised at how well Iran has dug in their heels, and clearly we don't know really who's in charge, who's running the country, but there is an extreme leftist faction, the IRGC, that I believe still does not really want a deal anytime soon. Certainly not under the terms that the Trump administration has proposed. So, sort of, it's getting more difficult for Trump to sort of back out of the position he's in and see how this plays out. And, odds are he may just say, look, he's never underestimate him. He may just say, look, enough's enough. We're going in and they're unleashing the missiles. We'll see. But, given that I'm not selling anything, I'm holding on at $80 oil. I still think there's good value in the names that we do own.
All right. So we're rallying today, maybe on the CPI data, maybe on a potential straight steal, but pretty much not. You wouldn't bet on that any sort of tentative deal holding, just based on what you've seen so far.
And in the meantime, Trump says we're in total control of the strait, and Iran says no, you're not. So, we'll see. Sort of, I still think that there's risk for ships going through the strait, and Iran still has a missile capability if they want to unleash that and cause disruption in the strait. And I still think shippers through the strait are nervous and a little bit hesitant to go full force resuming their shipping through the strait. It's not clear that the U.S. is in control, and certainly Iran's not willing to relinquish what they believe is their control over the strait.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to think that they're going to change their mind. I mean, it's estimated maybe have lost 6,000 people. But if you're willing to kill 30,000 innocent people for protests, 6,000 people in the army or in their guard is not really. I don't think that's a number they really care about when they view this on a much larger existential theoretical basis. But I don't know. Neither of us know. But what we do know is that so far they've dug in their heels and haven't shown any real, idea of making a deal that they'll stick to.
And I think they're willing to suffer the economic pain because, like we said before, the extremist faction there, this is to them is a religious war, and they're willing, like you said, to execute protesters. They're willing to go to the extreme and trying to hold out to their position. So, economically, even though inflation's rampant and things are not good economically internally, I think they're willing to ignore that and suffer the pain in the hopes that they can ultimately prevail here in their position.
Yeah. Well, okay. So you bought Oxy. Anything else that you're holding on to everything else? All right. Well, that sounds like a game plan. Maybe I'll look at Oxy too, because when you do things, if I do them, I usually make money.
You
Usually.
should do well. I'm
Huh?
holding on.
What's that?
I'm holding on to some of my pharma stocks here too, David. So
Yeah, some of those have been great, some not so much. Everything seems to be underperforming the market though lately because the market is really, these tech stocks that have been beaten down and now they're coming back with a vengeance. So it's tough. I haven't really been doing much of anything. I did buy a couple generic stocks. I bought Viatris and Teva. So I own Teva and I bought a little bit more. Both put up pretty good quarters, and so kind of, and also thinking about generics are at such a low multiple versus the rest of the market, and they're something that if you go to the pharmacy and you have to pick up a prescription, you're getting generics. Now they don't have the market power that the brand companies do, right? You'll get 1 week you might get an Amneal generic. I also own Amneal AMRX. Um, and the next month you'll get a Teva generic, and that's just because CVS decided to swap out which generic they're getting. So there's really, when you think of the moats there, they're not as good as a brand product like a Lilly has, where the doctor prescribes it, and guess what? You're on it forever, and you're not switching from the brand product. And the brand company owns both the government and the doctor relationship. So there's a different level of moat with those. But the structural moat is that once they get generics on the market, it's hard for other generics to really fight because it's a price driven market. And if you have scale like an Amneal or a Teva or a Viatris, um, you should generate a lot of cash for a long period of time over the bulk of those products. Now, that's the good of those companies, right? They're just cash generative, and their moat is that once something goes generic, they're there forever. The bad is that most of them have a little bit too much debt, and they don't have pricing power. So there's a cycle where Indian generic companies, not yet Chinese generic companies, but where they come in and they start undercutting each other, and there's a price war, and it becomes really bad, and the multiples get even lower. But that said, they're not uh, they're not great businesses. They're not bad businesses. I do go back to the story where Steve Cohen once asked me, "Has anyone ever made money in these companies?" And I said, what do you mean? Of course. He goes, no, what I mean is that these cycles of boom and bust, if you just held them for a long time, you'd be down, wouldn't you? And that's 100% true if you look at like Teva's market value. That alone was a black hole enough to wipe out profits that you might have made in other generic companies. That said, I think the low enough values now that I'm willing to own them. But no other big news in healthcare today. We're going to call it early, Bob. Unless you have
Let me
anything,
ask you,
question, anything
Bristol
you're going to
Myers
ask
is
about Pfizer or Bristol
no
Myers.
Bristol Myers. I'm not
Ugh.
the expert. I saw the headline. I own a little bit of that. I saw the headline that they were, and then they weren't going to be taken out. I don't know what.
Yeah, so it's more about the company that was buying them, or is rumored to be buying them, than Bristol Myers, because Bristol Myers is a good company. Some patent expiry is coming that makes it a bit of a problem, but AstraZeneca just stumbled so much, so they were like, okay, let's. And back in the day, these cost cutting type of deals people loved because the math is simple. Okay, so we're going to cut out 20% of the expenses. That is the value right then and there. And guess what? Maybe we'll do something better than we were before. All right. Maybe you will, maybe you won't, but at least I know for the next 2 years we're going to have these synergies and things won't be so bad. People didn't like this one because both companies don't have much for a pipeline and have patent expiries, and people didn't mind the Bristol Myers. I mean, Bristol Myers went up a little bit, but AstraZeneca went down so dramatically that even if the talks were still going on, their board would have been like, "Hey, pump the brakes. The market's very clear. We don't want this." Um, I actually think that, I mean, I've been doing some background work. I'm not there on Bristol Myers yet, but some background work on Bristol Myers. They're hiring quite aggressively, um, which is usually a sign that things are better uh, than than people know. In other words, you don't um, cost cutting. You can't grow. You can't grow into cost cutting. It's good to have cost cuts and all the rest, um, but they're kind of aggressively hiring for new areas. So I think they're going to be a little bit more dynamic than they have been, and uh, I think kind of like Merck in a way, they'll figure something out. Usually, the death of these companies is overstated. Like, oh, this is going off patent, and Eliquis is going to die, and this is going to, and that does happen. There's a dip, and the stocks underperform for a little bit, but then all of a sudden they pick up again. Saw it with Amgen, saw it with AbbVie, but you still have to have a solution for the innovation. And I'm not sure Bristol Myers has that part of it yet. So I'm doing work on it. I mean, I'm interested in it more than I'm interested in AstraZeneca, as you can tell, because I laugh at them. I laugh in their general direction. So But no other
Yeah.
news really. I could go through a bunch of stocks that I own and the rest, but on a day like today when things are going well, I don't want to mistake um, a bull market for smarts. So, so we'll leave it at that. We'll call it early, the shortest ever Wall Street beats. And if you have any questions, just ping us. But go to wallstreetbeats.com, sign up for the behind the scenes notes, and we'll see you next week. See you, Bob. See you, Jen.